All right, ladies, here we go. We're going to see about Murder for Her Majesty, Chapter 15. I'm currently borrowing it from archive.org, and it's going to leave us off right where we began or where we left off last. In Chapter 15, we know that Pup has been kidnapped by um, by her father's murderers, and they're covering their tracks because they're trying to buy time to find out what um, Pup's music teacher from London actually knows. And the boys find out that this is fake, that the letter that was sent was fake, and we're going to find out if they're going to be able to convince the Master Kenton of what's happening with Pup. And so let's begin. Chapter 15. Master Kenton was not in the cathedral when Geoffrey, Orlando, and Randall got there, but the old verger was puttering about. Sir, Geoffrey went up to him boldly. Do you know where Master Kenton is? The verger regarded them dubiously. You've missed him. He was there for Manton's. I expect he's gone home for his breakfast. Where does he live? Geoffrey persisted. It's urgent that we see him. Urgent mischief, I dare say, the verger retorted tartly. I know your rascally ways. I swear it isn't, Geoffrey said. On a stack of Bibles, if you like. Oh, yes, the old man said, unimpressed. And you'd swear if it was just the same. Randall wouldn't. Ask him. The verger turned to Randall. It's true, you aren't such a scamp as the other. Is it true? You aren't up to mischief. We aren't up to anything, and it's frightfully important that we see Master Kenton. The verger sighed. Well, he'll probably have my head for telling you. A nasty temper the man has, and no mistake. If you say it is important, he hesitated. He lives in Alewife Lane, next to the Mermaid Inn, number 6, I think it is. You know where that is? Yes, Geoffrey said. Thank you, sir, he added as they tore off. A few minutes later, they were pounding on Master Kenton's door. Coming, coming, his voice came impatiently from in. I'm not at all deaf. I'm not all that deaf. The door swung open and he stared at the boys. You? I thought I was free of you until after Epiphany. What do you want? Pup's missing, sir, Geoffrey blurted out. He didn't go home last night. Missing? Master Kenton repeated. Then he opened the door wider. Well, come on in. There's no sense of freezing on the doorstep. Sit down. He motioned them to chairs by a blazing fire. Catechism was sprawled on the hearth rug, sound asleep. Remember, Catechism's the cat. The boys seated themselves while Master Kenton took his place standing by the fire. He regarded them impassively for a moment while they shifted uncomfortably. Then he said, with a touch of impatience, "Well, I don't know how to start," Geoffrey confessed. "Try the beginning," Master Kenton suggested dryly. "Well, sir, the truth is that Pup's real name isn't Alistair Tucker at all," Geoffrey began, noticing the master's skepticism. He hurried on. "It's really Alice Tuckfield, and we think she's been kidnapped." "Alice? Good God, do you mean Pup's a girl?" Geoffrey nodded. "Geoffrey, if this is a prank, I swear to God I'll—" "It's not," he protested. "We met Pup on the street. I ran into her and knocked her down, and she looked hungry, so we took her home and gave her supper. And then we found out she could sing, and we thought it would be a grand lark to see how long she could hide in the choir without Old Frost noticing, and then let Pup in officially, and now she's been kidnapped. How do you know that Pup's been kidnapped? Maybe she is with Nate. Wouldn't that just be our luck?" Orlando muttered pessimistically. "But the letter," Orlando, Geoffrey argued. "What letter?" Kenton asked. "There was a letter that a man at the Mermaid gave me to give to Dame Agnes. It was supposedly from Pup's uncle, a Master Tucker, which isn't even her real name, who was taking her off to Knaresborough for the holiday. But, Geoffrey Fisher, Are you certain this is not a prank? Yes. Then you had better explain what's wrong with Pup having an uncle. I swear I've never heard of such a far-fetched load of nonsense. Geoffrey eyed him seriously for a moment. Master, do you remember the night you found Pup and me in the cathedral? Master Kenton's eyes narrowed and he nodded. Do you remember how spooked Pup was? Again, Kenton nodded. Well, Pup knew more about those men than she let on. That is why she was so scared. Those men were the one who murdered Sir Henry, and Pup. Sir Henry? Kenton interrupted. Then his eyes widened. Did you say Alice Tuckfield? At Geoffrey's nod, the master pushed his hair back from his face with an unsteady hand. Sweet Jesus, that's right. Well, Puff knew who they were, and it was one of them who gave me the letter for the dame. I recognized his voice. The shocked expression on Master Kenton's face was suddenly replaced by cynicism. He raised an eyebrow. You really had me going there for a moment, Jerry. You recognized his voice, eh? His tone was heavily sarcastic. That's the proverbial last straw. Now run along. Master Kenton, I'm not playing again. Game, Geoffrey said, his face pale and intense. Pup was really kidnapped last night, somewhere between Badern and Dame Agnes's. Please, you must help us find her. Now see here, Geoffrey, if Pup is really a girl, much less Alice Tuckerfield, do you really think Master Hunnis would have lied to me so that she could go on singing on the choir? Would he really think it proper? Randall spoke up. But you know how persuasive Pup can be. Please, sir, don't tell him. I like it here so much, she'd say. And she really is gifted. Master Hunnis would know that, he shrugged. Would you have betrayed her? I am not William Hunnis, he said firmly. Maybe he thought she was safer here, he persisted. There could be lots of reasons. Oh, I wish it were just a prank, Orlando blurted desperately. Then we could all go home and laugh about it with Pup. He bit his lip together hard, but one tear escaped anyway. Master Kenton studied each of them in turn for a long moment. Then he shook his head. I may be the most gullible fool in England, but I fear I'm beginning to believe you. Geoffrey, whatever made you think you could recognize a voice you only heard once? It was that on top of everything else, Geoffrey explained. I kept telling myself I was being fanciful, especially after all Pup had told me. But then when I got to the dames, Pup was gone, and the letter was about her. And the man rode away alone after he'd given me the letter. But why would they bother with the letter at all? Master Kenton mused. A needless risk if they were just going to. He fell silent. Maybe Pup told them Master Hunnis knows who she is or who they are, Randall suggested. The master nodded, and they need time to find out whether or not that was a bluff. He turned and faced the fire, drumming his fingers on the mantel shelf. A long moment passed. Geoffrey, he said, what exactly did Pup tell you? She tell you who the murderers are? No, but she did tell me that Father Cooper is in league with them. Father Cooper? He exclaimed. Good Lord, no wonder Pop is so afraid of him. He shook his head angrily. Then she said decisively, come on, let's go. They left up. Where, sir? Orlando asked eagerly. To Adrian's, to Master Frost's. He pulled on his heavy greatcoat. Are you sure Pup isn't with Nate? I don't think so, sir, Randall said. Nate left us before we left Pup, and she was headed in the opposite direction last we saw her. Suddenly, Master snapped his fingers, delving into one deep pocket of his greatcoat. He produced a familiar green muffin. The boys gasped. I found it last night near the south door of the cathedral, he told them. I guess that rules out Nate. Geoffrey gulped and nodded. But one of us ought to get him anyway. He'll help us. Master Kenton nodded. Very well. One of you run to Nate's and meet us at Master Frost's. He lives on Cooper Lane off of Market Street. I'll go, Orlando volunteered, as long as you promise to wait for me. Master Kenton smiled ruefully. No fear. Orlando and Nate soon joined the others on the corner of Market Street and Cooper Lane. They were both out of breath and looked anxious. Master Kenton raised one eyebrow. Our last hope dashed, I see. I shudder to think what Adrian will say, but let's get it over with. With Master Kenton leading the way, they strode up the steps to Master Frost's house and rapped on the door. There was no response for a long moment. Then they heard the footsteps and the door was flung open. Master Frost started to speak but stopped, staring at all the boys. Good Lord, he remarked at last, looking questioningly at Kenton. Won't you step in? He took them into the parlor where a good fire blazed in the hearth and motioned them to all to the chairs. I'll take it, he said. This isn't simply a social call. What's going on? Master Kenton outlined the happenings and their interpretation of them in a curt, cliff voice while Master Frost listened. So what now, Adrian? Kenton added. If Father Cooper is involved, shouldn't we go to the dean? Master Frost sighed heavily, his brow knit with worry. Then he nodded. I've been meaning to speak to Father Boyce about pups since Hunnis's visit. Now I wish I had. Did William tell you something? Kenton asked incredulously. Tell me? No. But I overheard them talking, so I knew, heaven forgive me, that Pup was a girl. The boy gasped and Kenton's jaw dropped. Well, good God, Hugh. What would you have had me do? It was too late to rearrange all the Christmas Eve music, and recess seemed the perfect time to deal with the problem. I'm not blaming you, Adrian, Kenton said. I'd have done the same thing in your shoes, though I'm not sure I'd have found to resolve to go to the dean at all in the end. But now it's a question of Pup's safety. Yes, Master Frost agreed. He turned to the boys. Perhaps one of you had better go and reassure Dame Agnes. She's bound to be worried. But, sir, Geoffrey protested, she believed the letter. We didn't even try to explain it to her and we're often out all day. Master Frost shrugged. Very well then, come along. When they arrived at the deanery, Father Boyce received them in his second floor study. He was surprised by their visit. He gave no sign, but he graciously offered to listen to whatever was troubling them. Excuse me. Father Boyce, Master Kenton began, we have reason to believe that one of the choristers has been kidnapped. They're not them kidnapped? Who and why? Pup. The dean raised his eyebrows. Well, go on. Pup is, Pup isn't, Pup's real name is Tucker, isn't it? The dean put in. No, father, Kenton said, taking a deep breath. It's Tuckfield. Tuckfield, he thundered. Alice Tuckfield? Sweet Jesus, do you mean to tell me she's been in the choir for 2 months? Who knew? Geoffrey swallowed hard. I, I think I was the only one who knew or believed she was Alice Tuckfield, but several of us knew she was a girl. We thought would be a grand prank to hide her in the choir. A prank, the dean repeated dully, resting his head in his hands. Suddenly he raised his head and looked keenly at Master Kenton. You said kidnapped, Hugh. Why? Briefly, Kenton explained about the letter and Master Hunnis's visit. The dean listened, the bleak expression easing out of his face. She's no fool, he said finally. But why, in the name of our Savior, didn't Hunnis tell me? Pup said the Queen was involved, Geoffrey said. Perhaps Master Hunnis thought. The dean cut it off. That's nonsense. Her Majesty would never have sanctioned Tuckfield's murder. Hunnis would know that. He probably felt Pup would be safer disguised as a boy, Master Kenton suggested. Father Boyce nodded. He laced his fingers together and gazed down at them thoughtfully. Father Boyce, Geoffrey blurted suddenly, we forgot to tell you something. Pup said Father Cooper was involved in the conspiracy. Father Cooper? I can't believe that. He stopped as he remembered his conversation with Pup. Tell people the child is mad, he murmured. They were talking about her, but then, you know, I know you'd rather not believe it, Kenton said, but even I have seen how afraid Pup is of him. I'm sure she believes he's implicated, but she can't be right. He's a priest. He's a pompous, self-righteous, ambitious bag of wind, Kenton said acidly, and you know it. The boy gasped, and the dean glared angrily at the master. See here, Kenton, I know you don't like the man, but murder, I can't believe he'd do it. He didn't do it, Geoffrey pointed out. He planned it. The man wants to be a bishop so badly. You can smell it on him, Kenton said sharply. Perhaps he wouldn't do anything for a bishopric, but I shouldn't think he'd stop at much. The dean studied Kenton for a long moment. In silence, the ticking of the clock seemed deep and loud. Finally, he sighed. All right, I hear your words, but I can't accept it. Not without some proof. I'm afraid I shall have to confront Father Cooper, try to satisfy myself as to whether he's involved or not. What good will it do? Kenton demanded. He's bound to deny it, and it will show our hand. Father Boyce sighed. I hope to set my own mind at rest, Kenton, before I accuse my own sub-dean of murder. I need to be sure in my heart. Leave me now and come back, he consulted the clock. At 1 o'clock. Perhaps by then I'll have some news. But what should we do while we're waiting? Geoffrey asked, unable to contain himself. I think you better explain the situation to Dame Agnes. The dean suppressed a smile at her expression at their expressions. And Kenton, you should go with them. Make sure she understands they are not at fault and not to be punished. Kenton shot a venomous look at him, which the dean returned blandly. The organist turned on his heel and stalked to the door, trailing the boys and Master Frost in his wake. Father Boyce watched them go, shaking his head slightly, then reached for the bell pull and gave a smart tug. A liveried footman appeared. My cloak, please, Hector. I'm going out. Why, Father Boyce? Father Cooper exclaimed as he ushered the dean into his parlor. What a surprise and an honor. Do sit down. May I offer you some refreshment, mulled wine, some tea, perhaps? No, no, thank you. I can't stay long, Dunstan. We're all quite concerned. Alistair Tucker Pup has disappeared. You wouldn't know of any of the friends the boys might have in the city. Father Cooper shook his head. I'm afraid I can't be of any help to you. But surely the lad is with one of the choristers. After all, he can't have vanished. The dean studied his hands. He isn't with any of the other boys, nor does Kenton have any idea where the boy might be. I'm rather afraid young Pup's been kidnapped. As he said the last word, he raised his eyes to Father Cooper's face in time to surprise a guilty start quickly smoothed over. Surely not, the priest said. What could, what use could a kidnapper have for a scruffy choir boy? Adrian would have it that the boy was stolen by a rival chorus master, but I'm not so sure. It does seem a bit far-fetched, Father Cooper agreed. Yes, and while I can't think of a single reasonable motive for kidnapping a mere chorister, he fixed Father Cooper with an intent gaze, I can think of at least one for kidnapping Alice Tuckfield. The priest blenched, but recovered quickly. A non sequitur, surely. Return the child, Dustin, and I'll see that you get away to France before the hue and cry is raised. Father Cooper shrugged eloquently. I haven't the faintest idea what you're talking about, Father. If the notion weren't completely preposterous, I'd almost think you were accusing me of kidnapping the poor child. I am accusing you, the dean said, his voice icy. I have it on reasonable authority that you are implicated in the murder of Sir Henry Tuckfield. Given that information, it's logical that you would want the child to disappear. Father Cooper huffed. I hardly think your absurd allegations constitute a conviction. The dean rose. I warn you, Dunstan. I shall see you stripped of your orders, degraded from priesthood, and punished in the strictest sentence the law will mete out. Father Cooper's smile was almost smug. A jury must first convict me. Without another word, the dean strode to the door and went out, slamming it behind him. Oh, snap! All right, ladies and gentlemen, if someone else is watching this, and there we'll stop there.